Redo You, the podcast that teaches you tools and strategies so you can build the confidence to rediscover and reinvent yourself. With me, Emma Hull, your favorite life coach. Each week, I'll introduce a concept that you can implement right away so you can live your most authentic life. Let's get started. Hi, beautiful goddess. Welcome back to the Redo You podcast. Emma here, and I'm talking to you this week about rumination and reflection. And we're going to talk about the differences between the two and how you can leverage reflection to actually help you get out of that rumination loop and move forward. Sound good? So rumination is that process where you find yourself caught in a thought loop, going over and over a situation, rehashing it in your mind, beating yourself up, and you never really get to a conclusion with your thoughts. It's just like you're going over the same thing over and over, and it can be something that happened recently or something that happened years ago. Know that rumination is completely normal. But you might find that when you're doing it, it's associated with feelings of anxiety, self-judgment, criticism. It usually doesn't feel good. Reflection, on the other hand, is a more constructive, intentional way of looking back at situations with a view to learn from them and how you can shift. When you invite reflection, it's about looking at a situation and asking yourself to step back and to be objective, questioning what actually happened. What was the real truth here? What was my part in this situation? How did I contribute to it? How did my reactions contribute to the situation? And asking yourself, if this were to happen again, what might I do differently, and what different outcomes might that yield? So you see, they're both practices of looking back at something that happened in the past, but one leads to anxiety and self-judgment, and the other leads to clarity and being able to master yourself so that you can make different choices in the future. Next time you catch yourself ruminating, lovingly interrupt yourself. Don't criticize or judge. Know that it is a completely normal thing to do. But interrupt that rumination and instead create space for reflection, whether that's using a journal or perhaps talking to someone else. Maybe you even have a conversation where you use voice notes to speak out loud to yourself. Or perhaps you, in meditation, sit and think through and ask yourself those questions. What was the actual truth of this scenario? If I'm describing it objectively, what actually happened? What was going on for me in that situation? How was I feeling? How was I responding? How was I reacting? How can I own my part in the process and what happened? And then finally, if this were to happen again or something similar, what might I do differently? What have I learned from this experience to be able to move forward? And notice how that experience of reflection usually yields a sense of clarity and lightness as opposed to that anxiety. Try it out and let me know. Find me on social at The Life Untethered and send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, beautiful, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Redo You podcast. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend, because together we rise even higher. See you next Friday.